Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Show. You are listening to the first and only podcast dedicated to the business of pharmacy. You can find all of our episodes at pharmacypodcast.com.
All right. What was it? That's more curious.
Hey, it's Todd Eury with the Pharmacy Podcast Network. You know, this is a special out-of-the-box show, unprepared in some measure because of how excited I am about coming back from HIMSS 2018 in the great city of Las Vegas. Not a Las Vegas fan, people. Not really a Las Vegas fan. It's a little too crazy, a little too noisy, but I do like the energy that it has from a business perspective. And I did some tweeting, I did some live periscoping through Twitter and little Snapchat, trying to kind of get more information out there and personalized. And while this was going on, there was another meeting that's a very, very big national meeting called South by Southwest. I'm sure many of you understand exactly what that is. SXSW, our own Pharmacy Podcast Network, Farming Your Career host Erin Albert was there. This is her second year in a row. Erin, I'm excited that you're part of the show tonight because this is a recap show about HIMSS and South by Southwest. So welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Thanks. Like two of the biggest meetings in the future of healthcare, back to back, almost overlapping each other. So excited to be here, and I'm excited to learn from you specifically what happened at HIMSS because you attended HIMSS.
Yeah, you know, this is my third HIMSS. I skipped a year. I went 2015, skipped 2016, went 2017 with you, and you were there. And thanks to Joe Lavelle, a little shout out to Joe Lavelle and Resultant and Intrepid Now, allowing us to be part of the Experian Health booth and podcasting, which was so exciting. However, HIMSS 2018, wow. I mean, it was, you know, everything from my perspective has been a bunch of buzzwords. People saying the word disruption too much, and I say the word dynamic too much, and people say next generation too much, and people are like, artificial intelligence, this. But something at HIMSS was about the execution this year. It wasn't about talking. It was about doing. I saw more actually being done in the booths and in the exhibit spaces. I saw robots walking around and driving around, and I saw drone technology and accountable care technology, analytics and predictive analytics and digital, they call it digital gaps with learning in healthcare. And I mean, there was so much that was actually happening that it made me feel like we finally reached this point in healthcare technology of doing rather than talking, which was exciting.
Yeah, and you shared off camera, so to speak, that you met the great John Nasta for the first time.
I was so excited. I've nicknamed him my digital health godfather, and I think it's starting to stick. I'm going to continue to call you that, Mr. John Nasta. He and I are actually going to do an upcoming pharmacy podcast. We haven't had him back in some time, but he is the great digital health philosopher, and he was surrounded by people at all times, and he did an incredible session with some healthcare executives called the HX360, which was about these higher level healthcare executives coming together and sharing from their perspective what they feel the future is in healthcare. And this is people like Bruce Greenstein, who's the CTO of Health and Human Services, and Mr. Barclay, who's the CEO of Texas Health, and Mitch Morris, who's the executive vice president of Optum PBM, and I think it's called Optum Site, and Emma Caramel, who's one of the greatest sought-after venture capitalists in healthcare IT. She was just absolutely amazing. And every time these people spoke, Erin, it wasn't high level things that are on the horizon. It was now. And that's what I mean by this year's HIMSS. This year's HIMSS was about the now. It wasn't about the future. It was about what was actually happening. And I think that's what got me jazzed up, was because of we're past talking. It's now about execution.
Was there any chatter about the Amazon effect happening in healthcare right now?
Yeah, Amazon was there. So Amazon had a big booth, and there were people swarming it, asking lots of questions. If anybody's been living under a rock, just in case, Amazon is most definitely coming into healthcare very strong over the next 10 years. I actually listened to some of their ideas about campus drone technology to start, and they said where this would fit is large hospital campuses, long-term care nursing home campuses, college campuses, anything that they could draw invisible radar-like GPS lines on to keep those drones under a specific area so that the FAA doesn't, crap their pants or anything like that, I guess, with drones flying around. But that kind of stuff to accelerate healthcare delivery, as well as their interest in delivering physical healthcare, which was really a piquing of my interest, meaning actually becoming a healthcare entity, and possibly, which they haven't done it yet, but I'm hearing whispers, actually having physicians on staff and pharmacists on staff and nurses on staff, and really becoming an Uber-like healthcare delivery model and entity. That's on the horizon, people. So, be looking out for stuff like this in the future.
Anything else you thought was novel, interesting?
So artificial intelligence and how they're going to use what they're saying, cloud computing and artificial intelligence together to accelerate healthcare data and understanding someone who is sick with a specific disease, chronic obviously, or something that can be injected into that patient's care plan, and allowing the data to run hundreds of scenarios of outcomes before administering the actual therapy. So that blew my mind, because if you think about it, someone has a specific type of cancer, they have a specific type of reaction to cancer medications, and now they start injecting different medications and different drugs. Maybe there's comorbid situations happening. Maybe they have cancer and diabetes, for example. And I'm a bad storyteller and making things up. But nonetheless, they could run a model and run it 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times to see what the outcome would be, to basically stop guessing and start actually making the right diagnosis and the right treatment plan the first time, based on things like pharmacogenomics and the study of the way medications react to, certain patients react to medications, and then so on. So that's not today yet, but that's the kind of artificial intelligence that I'm extremely excited of hearing about. I was telling, to bring up John Nost again, I was telling him I'm not excited about the artificial intelligence becoming, the humanoids walking around interacting with us. Those are the ones that worry me. But the healthcare artificial intelligence, to allow it to compute outcomes, that's just blows my mind, and I think that's amazing.
It's almost like Big Blue and chess, right? Like you could think out or play out all the scenarios in an instant and come up with the best scenario. I think that's fascinating. I'm almost gamifying, if you can, gamification of finding the best or optimal therapeutic regimen for a patient.
Yeah, virtual reality being used in surgeries, where a surgeon in a completely different area or a completely different country who's a specialist on something like the brain jumps into a surgery that's actually happening, and actually able to consult with the physician that's administrating the actual operation, and then having a collaboration with that through virtual reality. I mean, that is just, and by the way, that's not even like future. That's the kind of stuff that's being exercised, and it's happening now. So that's just, once again, it just blows your mind, because you and I, Aaron, are of the age, not to admit our ages, but I mean, technology to me when I was 7, 5, 6 was Pong,
Right.
where you'd take that little that little light blip on the screen, and kids, you guys, you're 25, 30-year-old, you guys don't remember that, but I mean, so we've seen it come a long way.
Yeah, definitely. We've come a long way from Atari 2600.
Much so. So I have an upcoming interview with the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, John Michaeli, who is part of the team over at MediSafe. And we're going to have an interview upcoming after I talk with you, Aaron, about South by Southwest. And he's going to share kind of his insights in how medication adherence still is a Rubik's Cube to be solved, and how their technology is advancing some of the state-of-the-art medication-assisted treatment. So I'm excited about having that as part of this recap show. So so much to talk about HIMSS. I could talk about HIMSS for another 2 hours, but I want to shift gears, and I want to talk about South by Southwest, because this is a conference I've never been able to attend myself. It started out as like music and artsy festival, and all of a sudden now it's matured into this digital publishing, digital health. Healthcare leaders are showing up there. Business people are now interested. So this thing has come a long way. So Aaron, give us a recap of South by Southwest 2018.
Sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about probably one of my favorite, if not favorite, meeting that I've attended in the last couple of years. And I had the honor of being a mentor and serving the healthcare community at South by Interactive again this year. So shout out to my contact there, Aurora. Thank you for the opportunity to come back. It was a pleasure in talking to, Todd, they're really our peeps. These are people who have multiple interests. I've called them multi-patientals. They're in healthcare, but they're very passionate about other entities, other things, other ideas, the future of healthcare, and blending together very disparate professions along with healthcare, like architecture, design, art. So it was truly an honor to serve as a mentor there. We talked about, in the mentor session, specifically career development. I think a lot of folks that are really interested in a South by Southwest struggle with having multiple careers going on at the same time. And I'm here to state emphatically one more time that yes, in healthcare, you can do more than one thing professionally. And I think a lot of people just need to hear that from somebody outside of themselves. So that was a huge conversation. As well, healthcare IT was brought up quite a bit, big data. How do you take these big data sets and make meaning out of them? As well, professionals who want to make radical changes within their careers. So basics like time management, but all the way through to I've done X as a physician or a surgeon. Now I want to do Y. I'm not sure what Y is, and I don't even know if I can still do X while I'm doing Y. So a lot of career transition chatter there, but these are people that are super bright and super passionate about multiple things. So they're definitely my people and your people. It was fun to do that part. But yeah, so South by Southwest, to just kind of back up, started as a music festival back in the 80s when we were probably playing Pong, Todd. But it's morphed into, I think, about a 2.5-week festival now. It takes over Austin. It has major components like music and film, but it also has the interactive portion. And that's where all the digital, the healthcare, the wellness information lies. And that's what part of which I was this past weekend at Austin. So, there were a lot of new components that South by also rolled out this year. And one of the things I love about them most is they're not afraid to try new things. And so I think For the first time ever, they've shown all of their major keynote speeches online at Facebook. And as of this week, when we're recording it, the mid-March, you can still watch all of the major keynotes on their Facebook page, basically for free. So the opening keynote was Esther Perel, who had a talk called The Future of Love, Lust, and Listening. She is really fascinating. She's a marriage counselor, and she's been at it for over 3 decades. She's got a best-selling book out now called The State of Affairs, Rethinking Infidelity. She too has a podcast that's very interesting. She has couples therapy basically on her podcast. Oh, cool. And so her Facebook talk is posted, so you can go watch it. I've watched it. I actually watched it online. I didn't see it live. But there were other massive keynote speakers like Elon Musk, Melinda Gates. And so all of those are over at their Facebook page. I would highly encourage anybody that's very curious about South by to just go watch those keynotes, because they have rock star after rock star at this event. And even if you go live, it's a challenge sometimes to get into the room of the major keynotes. But this year, I really appreciated that they were kind enough to stream the major keynotes. Also, for me, new this year was their trade show, and it was broken into several different categories. I really appreciated just walking through the booths. There were some great companies there. Met one of the gal founders of a company called Wethos, and it's like a 99 Designs or a Fiverr, but they only work with nonprofits. So I thought that was really cool in that, nonprofits deserve best and greatest talent, just like anyone else in the for-profit sector. So that was one company that I was really excited to learn more about. And then from an economic development perspective, there were a lot of cities there representing themselves. Raleigh, North Carolina was one example. They had several business owners, and the entrepreneur in me was, getting out her pom-poms for this. But they featured different small organizations or companies that were part of Raleigh and economic development. So I love that. I think more cities should consider doing that. Florida was there as well, talking about their film industry specific to the state of Florida.
That is so smart, Erin, as a state who, has an entire business development and marketing division within it, which you never think of that, an entire state, but to go to a South by Southwest to kind of shop their abilities to welcome artists, to welcome movie producing, to welcome all of these other players that are showing up at South by Southwest. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Also, for the first time ever, South by rolled out their South by Southwest Wellness Expo this year. Now, I didn't get over there. They ran it for 2 days during Interactive. I think your podcast would appreciate it. I do know that they had some medical marijuana focused booths and information over there. So I don't know if they're going to roll that portion out again next year or not, but I appreciated the fact that they're really trying to beef up and enhance their wellness and health portions of South by Southwest Interactive. Other things that, kind of caught my attention sounds very similar to your story with HIMSS. I would say the overall topics du jour that everybody was buzzing about were things like AR, AI, blockchain. SEO was a hot topic too, but not so much SEO in the traditional, website searches. It was all about video and how you search engine optimize video, as well as digital voice technologies. So Alexa, Google Home. And there was a lot of talk about how you go about conducting great SEO around digital voice. So how do you get ranked higher on Alexa for, a particular healthcare topic? I thought that was a really fascinating conversation. And even with the technology geeks in the room, I don't think they had all of the answers yet, particularly around the digital voice technologies. However, that's going to be huge in the future, I think, relative to healthcare and keeping patients at home and healthy and happy for a longer period of time rather than putting them, in a healthcare facility or even in transitions of care. I think it's going to be a huge, huge deal. One of the other sessions that I had the fortune to attend part of is HealthSpark 2018. It happened outside of the convention center, and shout out to my friend Xuan Gui, who was one of the organizers behind that. It was a 2-day event where they talked about a variety of healthcare topics, again, blockchain and health. Chatbots were really a huge portion of one of the sessions there as well. So they had a freshman gal from Stanford who created a chatbot that would help young people, adolescents, with emojis when they have certain healthcare diagnoses. Now, I didn't stay for the whole thing, but I thought it was absolutely fascinating, the statistic that she threw out. By 2020, 85% of customer interactions will be managed through conversation, not involving a human.
Wow.
Yeah, that totally blew my mind. Yep. And so I know that there's been a lot of talk of using chatbots in the education world, but this was the first time where I started seeing a lot more buzz around chatbots and chat for healthcare and healthcare delivery. So I thought that was really fascinating as well. And then, on the healthcare IT front, to just bring it back to HIMSS in a way, I talked to the founder of a company called CareSet. And CareSet specifically works with Medicare claims data to help companies guide drug launches based on the data that they cull through around Medicare. So we got to get Ashish on the show. Shout out to him. Need to learn more about that because obviously big data and HIMSS, I think it's extremely important, particularly for pharmaceutical companies and biotechnology companies, to get back to that point you made earlier, getting the right patients with the right therapies that are going to optimize outcomes.
So I heard you mention blockchain. Just as a pause, we haven't done a blockchain-specific podcast and how it will be tied into healthcare and even pharmacy and the world of claims and what that means for efficiency. But just for everybody's knowledge, blockchain is basically a public record of transactions that are controlled by a myriad of databases, just like the internet. So if somebody asks you, and nobody asks anymore because we don't care, because it is what it is, somebody might ask somebody, what's the internet? Well, it's a bunch of computers that are networked together by, fiber optics, basically, and it allows information to be passed from place to place to place. Well, think of that as in its simplicity with regards to blockchain, except for the fact that the blockchain algorithms determine if all of those transactions are valid, and it can validate it in a myriad of ways. So it's technology that must continue to be developed because of everything else that's coming. I almost think of it as the internet on top of the internet, but now having a scalable security and efficiency to make all types of transaction, whether that be healthcare, whether that be commerce, whether that be identity, having the potential to reduce cost and having the reduce of waste of auditing and chasing after identity thieves and all of this stuff. It's going to take internet security to a level that we've never seen before. There was a common theme back in my telecom days, not to age myself, but between
you already did that with the palm. Okay.
1996 through 2004, where it was called triple DES encryption. And triple DES encryption meant that you were actually encrypting something triple times and it was impossible to. Now blockchain is going to take and times that by 3,000. So it's amazing to see where all of this, of what you're talking about, how it's going to be set on top of that. So that's kind of just my PSA side note on blockchain. And we need to do a show, Aaron, on blockchain. So if you know anybody that could come on and actually talk with you or talk with I or talk with one of our hosts on on blockchain and healthcare, I think that would be a good show.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. The other comment that you made back to AI and reality and being here today instead of just talking about it for the future, there was a really interesting Facebook Live post as well from South by at one of the pavilions where they had pet dogs, okay, that were robots that interacted and learned about the people that they were interacting with over time. So it would be voice response related, and you could see as an individual interacted with the puppy or the virtual little robot animal that over time, just in that few minutes that it was being live streamed, the puppy was responding to, verbal commands from that individual, even petting and scratching and things like that. So when you think about crazy things like that being here today, it's almost Jetsons-like, right? You read about it in books and you saw it when you were a kid, on cartoons, but now it's really here. And to see all this technology come to life and how it could possibly help and evolve healthcare is truly exciting. And that's what I love about both of these meetings, South by and HIMSS. You truly have the greatest minds in healthcare IT. They're solving problems that are bringing things to life today.
So I feel that and I want feedback from the listeners, so please tweet us at Pharmacy Podcast and just give us your thoughts about this. And we'll make a hashtag for the HIMSS South by Southwest recap per se, or we just use both of their own hashtags just for tracking. But we're about 2 generations away from not appreciating what is taking place. And what I mean by that is people our age, 10 years on either side of us, are amazed and excited about what's taking place with regards to technology, blockchain, artificial intelligence, encryption, the changing of our commerce, where Bitcoin is going to become very much as it is today a reality, and how it could actually change our entire financial system. So we're about 2 generations away from someone having a future podcast, and it'll probably be more virtual than just audio per se, but when it's not going to be a big deal. I mean, I think I remember, how amazed I was at the internet, and now we look at the 25, 30-year-old who isn't as amazed by it as you and I are, because we were without it. So you jettison ourselves 2 more generations, and it's going to wipe that. In my opinion, I feel it's going to wipe out a lot of the awe, a lot of the holy crap. It's because it's just going to be just the way it is.
Yeah. And, I think I'm biased and I only have one generation that I've lived in, but I do have to say, going from Pong and to evolving to the internet and now all this new exciting technology, I think our generation, and I'll just go ahead and say it, I'm Gen X, I think really appreciates the whole scope and spectrum of technology evolving over the course of our lifetime. And it's only going to get faster and faster, to your point.
It's so true. I mean, we think of the what they call the digital capacity, which was a buzzword in 2013, and how they were talking about the zettabyte. And the zettabyte was, larger than the terabyte, and how we're going to need so much space, and and now that's not the case, because they're actually making storage technology that's going to be able to store 10,000 times the bit level than any terabyte storage unit could ever do today. And how when you start thinking of the microchip of 20 years ago and how it blew everybody away, and now the microchip today, and how it's, hundreds of years in advancement in where this is all going, and it has to be based on what's coming with artificial intelligence. It's just mind-boggling to think of where we're going to be just even one generation from today. So it's exciting, but I want to just play out that theme again of what I said at the beginning of this podcast, and that is it's now. The future is now. It's happening. So we don't have to talk about it anymore. We don't have to say what's coming. I mean, obviously more is coming and more innovation is coming. But I've seen more at the HIMSS this year of actual execution and things that were happening. With even regards to the building of instrumentation on the floor based on a custom instrument being needed in surgery, and how a certain shape in order to get an instrument into a vein or into a spacing within the heart or within the spacing of the brain could be designed on the fly in like a surgical instrument. It's just like I said, and when I saw the machinery there doing, the calculations and the calibrations and actually designing it, it just blew me away.
Yeah, we've come a long way from Pong.
We have. So I have some interviews that we'll be playing after Aaron and I wrap up, but if you attended HIMSS, if you attended South by Southwest, and I've seen tweets come in, I've seen chatter on LinkedIn, share with us. Send us a comment at Pharmacy Podcast. Make sure you hashtag it, hashtag South by Southwest 2018. Or what was their official hashtag? Was it 18 or 2018?
I don't know. I've seen it both ways. I've even just seen plain South by Southwest.
Okay.
So I think you'll get it either way. But yeah, we would love to hear from you. If there was something we talked about tonight, I know Todd brought up blockchain and we'll work on that. But if there's other things, artificial intelligence, robotics, things that you want to hear more about, dear listeners, please let us know and we'll do our best to try to get the best hits and best topics to you on this podcast.
Yep. And if you're listening to the show, you want to talk more about blockchain, more about artificial intelligence and pharma, more about precision medicine, Aaron, they're hijacking the word pharmacogenomics and now they're calling it precision medicine. So I was Mr. Pharmacogenomics there for about 2 or 3 years, and now I have to change my language to precision.
Oh, no. Well, it happens.
So, it does, to the best of us. So until our next podcast, I'm going to go play some Pong. And on my iWatch, probably. Matter of fact, they need that, Aaron. They need they need a Pong for the iWatch.
I don't have an iWatch. I don't have Pong anymore. So maybe I'll just go pet my real cat instead of a robotic dog.
They're going to tariff and tax having real animals to force us all to get artificial intelligence animals that can spy on us.
Always something. Something. Well, thanks,
Aaron.
Todd, for having me on the show tonight to chat with you about this. Again, I think both meetings are really exciting, phenomenal, and it was fun to share the experience with you.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron, for the recap of South by Southwest, and thanks to our listeners for listening, and please share the show. Once again, tweet us at Pharmacy Podcast. And as always, we thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Podcast. Hey, Pharmacy Podcast listeners. Did you know that there's over 15 podcasts dedicated to the profession of pharmacy? Look it up. Go Google something. Google SoundCloud Pharmacy Podcast. Find it under list, playlists. 15 plus podcasts. Pharmacogenomics, career development, law and pharmacy, senior care, specialty pharmacy, community pharmacy, pharmacy technology. Take a listen. Get involved. You want a podcast? Contact the Pharmacy Podcast. There's some new shows out there. Pharmacy Universe, RX Radio, Core Consult Podcast, Talk to Your Pharmacist, even a show by the American Pharmacists Association, Locked on Pharmacy. All of these shows should be part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. It's the entire reason we developed the network in the first place. Because guess what? Unified voices are louder than voices alone. And that's what this network is about. The voice of the pharmacy professional. The business pharmacy. Contact us today. Contact us today. pharmacypodcast.com.